It's just one of those nights where technology is not our friends tonight.
No,
Oh,
not tonight.
oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, there's little the intro is right there. I don't know where it went. It's gone. I'll have to find it some other time. So, hey gang, thank you for hanging out and waiting a little bit here. We're a little behind schedule, but technology's not being our friend. It's like Jerry's having some things, and then my computer decided it wasn't going to find my camera. I've been out here since about 20 after 6, and it's like, well, that didn't work. Well, that doesn't work. So, Jerry, tonight, let's talk. Last Friday was a day of clarification for people in your business. Kind of tell us what happened from the small business SBA last Friday.
Well, last Friday around midnight, SBA finally finished up what is really sort of the first part of how we're going to look at the whole forgiveness program for small business. So I'm going to run through, there's many facets of it, and I'm going to run through basically what they're looking at in terms of the small businesses. And then what I want to focus on is the self-employment, because with all of our listeners out there, those that are watching us, the majority, I would say probably 75% of you are going to be small business owners. So I was able to get today sort of the background and how they're going to look at self-employment. There are some positive factors to what I'm about to share with you tonight. But John, I want to be very clear with everybody out there. This is extremely fluid. There is constant changes that are coming about. So what we talk about tonight is not cast in stone. I am not coming off the mountain with the 10 commandments of about, this is exactly what's going to happen. Okay. But at least it's going to give you some food for thought and allow you to kind of continue through the program. There's a lot of conversation about, how difficult do we make the forgiveness? How easy do we make the forgiveness? We as an industry are still sorting through who's actually going to make the final decision. I will tell you as of right now, that final decision for forgiveness is going to be the SBA, right? It's not with the banks. So you have to clearly understand who you applied through with your PPP loan, the payroll forgiveness loan. That's who you're going to have to go back through for forgiveness. And so we have to be clear on that. The methods that are going to be used vary. Right now, you can go out to the SBA website. You can search forgiveness payroll protection program, and there is up there the preliminary sheets that talk about what you have to do. There's actually going to be 3 different applications that you have to fill out. The first one is the certification that you use the funds for it. The second part, which is Appendix A, talks about how you calculated your payroll. And then the second appendix actually is where you're going to plug in what you paid different people, who those people are, certifying your FTEs, your full-time equivalents. It does give you step-by-step instructions. What's then going to happen is how does that get to the SBA? It's going to go through the banks. Now, you can work with those applications. A lot of the banks are looking at ways to make this electronic for you. So you kind of have to bear with us, because the first set of forgiveness from when the original first disbursements went out is probably going to happen around the second week of June, is when the banks are going to open up to look at the forgiveness program. The other thing is, with the flood that's going to come in, it's not going to happen immediately. I am going to probably go out on a limb and say it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks before you hear from your bank whether the SBA has accepted your forgiveness or not. So let's kind of level set the playing field here, that we want everybody to understand this is not going to be an instantaneous process. It's not going to be an overnight process. Again, SBA is going to be flooded with these forgiveness applications. It's going to go through their system. They're going to issue to the bank what's forgiveness. We're going to communicate that. Now, hopefully your board isn't lighting up there with everybody. Well, if mine isn't forgiven, what's the appeal process? What do I need to go through? You're 10 steps ahead of where we are in the banking industry. And I'm sure SBA, as they look through this, will come up with what is the appeal process. That's further down the road. So let's just kind of focus in on what you need to do and what you need to look at in this appeal process.
Sure.
So let's start with the self-employment, John. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay. On the self-employment piece, here's a couple of things. number one, in self-employed individuals, which is most of your gig employees, your payroll protection loan was calculated on 2.5 times your monthly net income from your Schedule C. Okay.
Yep.
So let's just take, for example, your maximum was $100,000. The maximum loan that you could get as a self-employed individual is a little over $15,000. All right. Now, what they have decided on the self-employment is you're automatically going to be forgiven based on this calculation, which is whatever that total year salary is. So let's say if you had $27,000 as net income, you divide 27 by 52, multiply by 8, that is your forgiveness, which runs out to about $4,500. So even though you may have qualified for $8,000, the forgiveness that you paid yourself is whatever your net income was on your Schedule C divided by 52 multiplied by 8.
Okay, so we're looking at line 31 of Schedule C.
Right.
And
yep, go ahead, John.
And then divide that by 52 and then
multiply by 8.
And then multiply by.
Yep. Here's the catch, and people are going to go, well, but wait a minute. I was available to get 2.5 times the monthly. That's correct. That's going to give you actually 10 weeks. So here's the other piece of it. Under self-employment, you can write off mortgage interest. You can write off utilities. You can write off rent. And what they've added to the forgiveness program, which is a 180 turn from what I talked about, is your home office. So a percentage of whatever your home office is to the square feet of your home, the expenses you incurred during that 8-week period, mortgage interest, utilities, cable, phone, all of that, you can add to the forgiveness piece. Easiest way to think about it is if you have a home office and you declare what you do on your tax returns, you're simply going to look at that declaration as an 8-week period. If most of us know, when you go through determining a home office, it's based on a percentage of square foot. So let's say you have $10,000 in mortgage interest and your home office is 500 square feet. You know, you have $500 worth of mortgage interest that you can write off against the home. Take that $500, divide it by 52, multiply it by the 8 weeks. That's the amount of interest that you would write off. So even though you qualified for more money and you're not going to be able to write off as much, you can use those expenses. However, what you do declare under the PPP program, you're going to have to deduct when you do the home office deduction when doing your 2020 tax returns. They're not going to allow you to double dip.
Okay.
All right. So it's something to think about. You know, if you qualified for $10,000 and you the way you do the calculation, you get $5,000 of salary you can now get forgiven out of that 10. You then look at the remaining $5,000 over that 8-week period. Did you have enough expenses? Are you going to write that off against your tax returns, or are you going to keep the remaining $5,000 as a loan at 1% interest over a 2-year period?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the sole proprietors have to look at in terms of forgiveness. A lot of the thought was, well, I'll just write myself a check. And no, when they came out with the final forgiveness, and this is again why I've cautioned everybody as we've gone through this, John, repeatedly, is this has all been fluid. And
very much so.
Until SBA got the final rules down, I think it's nice and easy. People can now figure out right at this point how much is going to be forgivable. Look at your expenses. You'll know what you're going to carry over. What are you going to give back? What is forgivable? The main thing we want to say, John, is everybody think about this. You're getting working capital at 1% interest. So even if you have a $2,000 or $3,000 loan left, it's working capital for your business. I want to share. I was on the phone with a very nice woman. She has several salons in the town that I work in, Portsmouth. Her name is Angel. And she realized some of her salon people don't want to come back because they're concerned about COVID. They don't,
Right.
the mask and all that. And she said, because they don't want to come back, my full-time equivalence is going down. But she said, what I'm looking at this is maybe 50% of the payroll protection loan is being forgiven. I'm looking at the remaining 50% as a working capital loan for my business.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
So, yeah.
Okay, so Jerry, let's just put some real numbers here to this.
Sure. Go ahead.
So if we just say that our line, Schedule C, line 31, was $52,000. Now, kind of what we were thinking last week before the weekly thing jumped into it, they were taking the 52,000, they were dividing that by 12. And it came up to roughly 4,333. And then they were taking that times 2.5.
Correct.
Okay, so that would have given us a loan amount of 10,833. Okay, so that was what we were talking about last week. I got to type this in. So now this week, so we take our 52,000. So now we're down to, and we divide it by 52, so we're down to 8, and or exceed $1,000 a week, and multiply that by 8. So now we could pay up to $8,000 of that 10,800 that they sent to us.
Is what they're going to consider you paying yourself your payroll, and that's forgivable.
So now we've got, in our scenario right here, we have $2,833 that could be used for the utilities and such, or what have you. Those
utilities, mortgage interest, rent. If you have an outside facility, yes, the mortgage interest is 100% on the outside facility. The rent on a separate facility, 100% write-off. Utilities, your electric, your gas, your oil, all of that. The piece that we were understanding, and the piece that was not in there, was the home office deduction.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've added that into the forgiveness. So for those of us who do have a home office, where in this case, John, the $2,800, we would have turned around and said, okay, what do I do with it? I have a home office. Now you can take the expenses for a home office, and you can add that to continue to add on to the forgiveness for that $2,800.
So let's look at a home situation where, since this is over an 8-week period, that would probably be 2 payments to your mortgage.
Two payments to your mortgage.
And let's say that mortgage, let's say there was $500 of that payment was for interest, and I don't know what, $1,200 or whatever would be for the principal. Let's just go with those numbers. So does that mean then with those 2 months, that would be $500 interest, and then I had this $1,000 of interest, and I would have to take that at the same ratio that I am claiming my home office. So if my home office is 10%, then 10% of that 1,000 could be utilized.
$50, right?
With that situation, $50 a month.
Yeah, $50 a month. Yep. So again, in the home office situation, it's the percentage of square feet.
Yep.
It's the percentage of square feet that you have. And again, they're qualifying kind of the home office the same way the IRS qualifies the home office.
Somebody asked on Facebook, gross income. It's Schedule C, line 31 for the self-employed.
Right. It's not the total income that you made for the year. It's the net income that you reported, because when you are self-employed, they look at what you're paying yourself is the net income from your business, what you really realized after expenses.
So mortgage interest, rent, we talked about home office expenses. Was there anything else that they mentioned for other expenses that were new with this clarification that came up?
No, it basically followed the same guidelines as the IRS does, which allows you the write-offs for the home office expense.
Okay.
So the only thing it doesn't fit in there is, for those of you who do have home offices, if you do any capital improvements to the property, such as, you repaint the whole house and that home office is included, you have a percentage. No, they don't go that far into it. And really, they classify utilities, again, as cable, internet, phone, your heat, your electric, your hot water, your air conditioning, basic utilities. And I would refer people, if you want a classification as to what the utilities are, go out to the IRS website and look under home office and see what they classify as utilities.
Yeah, and they're usually that information's pretty easy to find when you start searching around a little bit out there.
Now, let's talk about documentation in that piece. What they're going to look for in documentation is they're going to look for copies of canceled checks, copies of your mortgage payment, principal and interest broken out. They're going to look for copies of your utility bills. They're going to look for canceled checks for those utility bills or online payments or credit card payments. You are going to have to supply that information. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest you start to gather that information up now. Even if you are not self-employed and you fall under the regular payroll protection forgiveness plan, when it comes to employees, they're going to be looking for canceled checks. They're going to be looking for your payroll records. The list is pretty extensive of what they're going to look for in terms of documenting how you spent the money. Mm-hmm. And if you go out to the SBA website, it will actually break it down for you. Copies of canceled checks, bank statements, whatever it is to prove that you spent that money there. If you are a multi-op and you have employees, photographer, whoever it is has employees, they're going to want to look for your ADP payroll records. They're going to want to look, you can supply tax filings to the state, to the federal government for your quarterly filings, however you want to do it. So they are going to be looking at that for it. Caveat, anybody who got $2 million or greater, you are going to be audited.
No
all right?
question about it.
It's very clear in the forgiveness, the SBA is going to audit your records. I don't know how many out there. Raise your hand if you got 2 million plus. But be prepared. You're going to get audited. And it is very clear in the regulations that they're going to do that.
Wow, well, I guess when you're at that level, you better have.
You don't care at that level. You have accountants. You're all prepared.
Yeah,
for
you're
it.
prepared for that. So it's a different world.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that came out from last week, we met off air, we talked about this, but for those who would like to still apply for that, because even if they don't use it all for payroll, as you've mentioned on a couple of occasions, it's a low interest operating loan. What are the deadlines for that before people can't apply for it anymore?
The government has said June 30th is the final date. Again, we're looking at another stimulus package. I was on the phone with some people in the government this morning. There is some talk about maybe if the money is still available, they might extend it further. So the one thing they did make clear is they're not going to allow for multiple applications. So people that applied once under your tax ID number, that's it. You've got it. You can. Mm-hmm. Now, if you own multiple businesses, and this came offline after our conversation last week, I'm a sole proprietorship. I report a Schedule C for DJ, jazz music, and entertainment. Then I have another Schedule C for Jerry Bazata, greatest photo booths in the world. Mm-hmm. And then I have another one for Jerry Bazata, the Bubble Man parties. You can do a PPP loan for each one of those Schedule Cs. So husband and wife, husband's a DJ, wife is a photographer, videographer. Each one of them can apply separately. Now, the other thing that also came into play, a lot of times people will look at self-employment, husband and wife, and you file a Schedule C. The primary business owner of that Schedule C, so Jerry Bazata, DJ, jazz, music, and entertainment. My wife handles some of the booking. She, talks to some of the brides. Mm-hmm. I cannot claim her unless I'm actually writing her a check as an employee. So that husband-wife rule kind of fit in there because some people are saying, okay, well, I'm self-employed. What if I add my wife in under the spousal rule of self-employment Schedule C or single member LLC? For that spouse, be it husband or wife, unless you're writing them a check and they're on payroll, it can only be one person per Schedule C in the calculations that we did earlier.
And when you say writing them a check, that would have been a history of writing them a check. It's not all of a sudden.
History of writing them a check.
That it isn't all of a sudden today.
You got the loan. Now all of a sudden you're going to start paying your wife. No, it's not going to fly with that. They're not going to agree to that. But if you've had a history of, hey, my wife's worked with me on my company, again, Schedule C, sole member, single member LLC, sole proprietorship, sole, one, doesn't mean, yes, you're soulmates, and that's how we're describing it. Although we all believe it, we all think about it. But again, the spouse, only if, again, you were writing checks for that spouse.
Excellent. So we've got a few folks who are popping in with questions. If you guys have got some questions out there, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, you should be able to put those in the chat. I think those are coming to my computer. And such, and we can get those to us. Jerry, we have one question. We talked about this a little bit, but we'll just hit it again. If things keep dragging out, can they qualify for unemployment after the PPP period is run out?
Yeah. Again, yes, you can. From what I understand, I've checked into a lot of the states. Yes, you can apply for the unemployment. Again, I would just check with your individual state. What you cannot do, and I know this for a fact, is you cannot get both unemployment and the PPP at the same time. So let's go back to our scenario, John, of $50,000.
Yeah.
You're going to write off $8,000. You're going to have to claim that income to one of your weeks there. Now, there's unclear as to, can I say I wrote a check for $8,000 and I just paid myself this week $8,000 and then next week collect on unemployment? I don't know the answer to that. And again, you're going to have to fish that out with your own state. There are people that have applied for unemployment, then went for the PPP, were awarded it. Now they're trying to kind of just sort through that. But again, you can't double dip. So it's just going to be how you're going to treat it with the unemployment basis. So one person shared with me, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but they said basically they claimed all the PPP in a single week and then were allowed to collect the following week. And again, it's how the states are looking at it. They control that piece of it, but unemployment's not going to let you double dip. So it's really how each state looks at it individually.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for the question. That was tossed in there. So just some people saying that how helpful everything is on that. Okay, so when the person applies, once the money is put in, they've got 8 weeks in which they have to deal with the money.
Yeah.
Payroll and other expenses to have their paper trail. If they, in our scenario here, they had $2,800 that they couldn't use for payroll, and if they can't use it for something else, what can they do with that $28? What are or $2,800? What are their options?
Is Vegas open yet?
No, it isn't, but it will be. Put it on red. Let's go.
Again, it becomes working capital. So you're going to have to pay that back. My advice as a banker is, you know what? It's a low interest rate loan. You pay it off over 2 years. We don't know what's happening in our industry, John. I think today I've talked to 4 DJs. All of them are seeing cancellations for September. They're starting to hear rumbles for October. You know what? You're going to have bills to pay at some point. It's beyond the forgiveness period. If it's $2,800 that's going to put Christmas gifts under the tree, it's going to get your family through the fall, you know what? It's a 1% loan. Mm-hmm. You're never going to see this again. If you go to the banks for a loan, you're looking at 7-8%. There are some other SBA loans out there that are 3%. I know some of the fintechs like PayPal, Quicken Loans, Questec, they're offering some other loans, credit unions, but again, it's a 1% loan. I want everybody to understand this was money to subsidize, and the forgiveness is a grant, but it's also money to help you with your business. And that's how we need to think about it. Yes, we all don't want to pay interest. Yes, I want you to pay interest. I'm a banker. That's how we make our money, okay? Yeah. But we have to understand this is what business is. This is what self-employment is. You have to manage that through the process. And you have to look at what is really right for your business and what you need to do. Okay? As I always say at all the conferences, and John, you've heard me say this before, as a DJ, you have to be a business owner first and an entertainer second. And this is where being a business owner really comes into play. we're not talking huge dollars. Even under self-employment, you're capped out the maximum loan amount of $15,000, almost close to $16,000. It's not a lot of money, but that $1,000 or $2,000 3 or 4 months from now could be a big difference for you.
I got a question here. If our for an employment that's out not quite our area, but let's see if we can handle it. If our business is paid $250 for the gig, are we required to pay that ourselves or claim that as income so that we can keep our business account for expenses so we don't lose our unemployment benefits? That's a great question. Is if I'm doing a party in the street and I'm getting $150 for it, because it's got to go through the business, and then it would in essence pay me. And I don't know if anyone has had an answer to that, to know if that money that went to your business but didn't become your personal payroll, how that's all going to fit together.
And I think, John, to be respectful to the person answering the question, I think what you're trying to do is split hairs here.
Yeah.
I think, again, you're the business owner. Ultimately, it flows to your bottom line. For you trying to play games for $250, if you ever get audited, and believe me, there's talk of, with all of this process of auditing small business owners who have for the first time gotten unemployment benefits, I'd rather be up forward. And again, for that person asking that question, if you're the sole owner of the business and you're the only employee, you are the business. This is your bottom line income. Unless this person that asked the question is a C corp, and nothing flows back to them other than them writing themselves distributions. Mm-hmm. You're walking a fine line.
Very much
here.
so.
You really are. And I understand. I don't want to make light of it. Every penny counts. Every dollar we earn counts. But if you're going to micromanage it that far down, look at it this way. What's the risk if you get caught and you get penalties and fines?
Exactly. It's just
that's the real issue is you may get away with it, but what if you do get audited and now they turn around and they disqualify everything that you got and force you to pay it back? I'd rather be honest and just say, hey, I earned $250 this week. You know what? It's what you got. If I was a W-2 employee and I was on unemployment and somebody hired me back for 3 weeks, okay, I'd have to declare that.
Yep.
If I went and got a self-employment job, and again, it says, did you earn any income either through day labor, through hourly labor? The government, they're asking for that. So we have to kind of think of that in the same way. I mean, honestly, it's cash under the table. That's your problem. But, I mean, let's think of it in reality is how much do you want to kind of play games with that and then, in fact, really hurt yourself in the long run?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great answer. That we don't have an answer for surely, but it's better to play it safe.
Exactly.
Playing safe. Isn't there a level of income that you can make? And again, I'm not an expert in Nigeria. I know you're not, but I thought there was you could make a few dollars a week before it affected that unemployment, but.
And again, I haven't really focused in on the unemployment piece. And I know there's a lot of questions out there. And unfortunately, I don't work for unemployment.
Yeah, exactly. It's not,
John,
what we're here for.
Too. And again, this is where you really have to kind of flush it out with the unemployment department. Look at the rules, look at what's posted on your various websites, and then make a judgment call. The other piece of it is call an accountant, call a CPA. These guys are very knowledgeable in it. They can kind of help you with it. If not, reach out to your local state representative and see what their take is on it.
Another good question. If they get any income for the business during that PPP period, does that affect anything?
No. Again, let's focus in on what the payroll protection program was. The payroll protection program was to keep people employed, all right, was to bring workers back. There's a lot of people that are earning income and also took the PPP because the income they were earning was not enough to support the payroll that's there. Mm-hmm. So let's look at this avenue. If you got the PPP program, let's take it from this avenue. Let's go back to the 50,000 piece of it, John.
Yep.
All right. We said that you would get $8,000 eligible for 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. What if you had 6 weddings in 8 weeks at $2,000 a piece? Okay, that's $16,000. All right. Let's say you do 2 weddings out of the 6 weddings you would have done, but you're still getting it. You're still losing income. So the site and what you've got to keep in mind is what was the overall income you lost? And was this to supplement that income that you lost? That's what the payroll protection program was to supplement or protect what you would have gotten in payroll. So again, don't overthink it. To all the businesses out there, don't overthink that basis. Go back again to the model. I would have done 6 weddings at $2,000 a piece, or 8 weddings at $2,000 a piece, $16,000. I qualified for 8. I still lost $8,000 in income. So I only recovered a portion of what I got. If one wedding comes back, great, but you're still not at that $16,000 level.
Okay, now the questions are starting to bunch up here. Somebody was asking why the rules. Why does the SBA keep changing the rules? Is this changing so much, or is it just really finally defining things?
It's defining things. The SBA isn't changing the rules, and in fact, if everybody looks at it, the SBA kept saying we haven't defined the forgiveness rules. If you went out on the SBA website for the past several weeks, they didn't. And it's a good question, John, that I want everybody to be aware of. This thing got slammed so fast that nobody had a chance to really sit back and think this through. And what we have to realize is the government didn't pass it, and all of a sudden, like a magician, they pulled this out of a hat and went, okay, here's all the rules. Here's how everything works. Think about our government. Our government comes out and says, we're going to offer payroll protection. We're going to make sure every business gets to cover 8 weeks worth of payroll. Okay? We're going to allocate $350 billion. And then they said, oh, and by the way, SBA and banks, you guys are going to administer it. So you now write the rules. So that's what SBA did. As they got into this and they sought the advice of CPAs and banks and IRS and all this, you have hundreds of people that are working on this and trying to define what the issues are. And again, as I put in one of my articles, both in DJ Times, Pro Mobile DJ, is we were asked to do something in several weeks that would have taken months, if not years, to work through and figure out. And most of the people that were working on this were working from their kitchen tables. They weren't in their offices. They weren't whiteboarding. So people, I want clearly to understand, somebody wasn't sitting 3 months ago going, we know the coronavirus is coming. We know Congress is going to come out with a $3 trillion. Let's start writing the stuff for this. They were like, what? SBA, here it is. And you got 15 days to get it out. How do you, in reality, John, we smile about it.
Yeah.
I'll take anyone that's over here. I'm going to tell you, you have been given $350 trillion to loan out to businesses, and you have 15 days to come up with a bulletproof program on how you're going to underwrite it, administer it, monitor it, qualify it, and then collect it. That's a monumental task.
For sure.
So please, people, don't get mad at the banks. Don't get mad at the SBA. We're trying to do this. And maybe with taking the time to now come out with the forgiveness program, it's working to our benefit. A lot of you, last week I said, I don't know that they're going to have the home deductions. Matter of fact, there was nothing in there about home. It said, the original plan said you had to be renting an office. You had to be doing this. Well, now they thought about it and they said, hey, we'll include it. We all should stand up and applaud. So, but I know where this person is heading is, hey, you're telling me I qualify for 2.5 times. Why is it not forgivable? Well, when they looked at it from the self-employment aspect is we're telling employers with W-2 wages that you can only get forgiveness for 8 weeks. We have to hold that true for the self-employed individual.
Sure.
Why would we treat you guys any differently if we're telling a business owner he's only qualifiable for 8 weeks? So I think that was kind of an aha moment for those that were writing the policy that said, we have to treat everybody fairly. If I own a restaurant and I have a staff of 100 people, I can only get forgiveness for 8 weeks worth of payroll. Why would we then give forgiveness to a self-employed individual for really what? 12 weeks worth of payroll? That's unfair. So they said, let's level set the playing field. Is self-employed individuals that are going to pay themselves are going to be restricted to this 8-week measure. How do we measure it?
And that's where they come up with use the numbers.
Yep.
Somebody asked if we could talk a little bit about the a sole proprietorship and an LLC and the a S corp. That's next Monday night, actually.
Yeah, that's
we'll just segue
that's part of the 101 training, isn't it, John?
Yep, we are right now on both the DJ side and the photo booth side. We are doing a weekly show. Monday night's the DJ version. Wednesday night is the photo booth version. And next Monday, Jerry is going to join me, and we're going to talk about that exact topic, about what is the best business structure, what's involved with each one. And the idea is, for those of you who are just starting, this might be something to do it right the first time. For those of you who have been in this for a while, it might be time for you to look at changing the methodology of your business operation. And that's what we'll be digging into next week on Monday night. And
I won't say a word, John. My lips are sealed.
So we'll get to that for surely. So if you guys just keep an eye out on my Facebook page, facebook.com/JohnYoungMN. Every day I put the links up for the shows, and we'll have Monday's show up there. And I think we've got it scheduled for, 8 o'clock Eastern. I believe that's what we're doing. So,
my hot dog in one hand and my beer in the other.
Excellent. Yes.
Happy Memorial Day, right?
Yeah, that's what we'll be doing there, doing it live. So, excellent. So yeah, for those, a couple others have been asking if these videos are going to be there. Yes, they're going to stay wherever you're watching it right now. They'll probably have to process a little bit, but you can come back in a little while and be able to rewind from the beginning and watch the different things. And we also had a really good discussion last Monday, I believe it was, last week Monday, so about 9 days ago. And we went through a lot of different things. Obviously, there was information available tonight that wasn't available then, but a lot of great content there for those of you who are thinking about maybe signing up to take advantage of this before this program is all extinguished. So in a worst case, Jerry, just with that PPP, if they don't decide they don't want to put it for payroll, I mean, this could be just used as a 1% operating loan for our, let's go back to our example. This could be a $10,833 1% operating loan.
Yep. And again, you're not required to ask for forgiveness on the loan. If you don't ask for forgiveness on the loan, it's going to convert to a loan for your business, again, at 1% interest. What we all have to kind of look at is there is a lot of programs out there. I got some calls about the Main Street program, Main Street lending program, which is being offered by the Federal Reserve. That is again for much larger companies. Minimum net income is $250,000 a year. Employee size is 500 plus. But again, you have lending opportunities through either the disaster relief loan. I know a lot of people applied for the EDLI. There are a lot of other programs that are being offered by credit unions and banks.
Yes.
So you need to kind of do your homework a little bit. You kind of need to investigate. I got a phone call that someone was looking at someone had shared with them that they got their EDI loan and then they were qualified for a loan through the SBA at 3% interest. I'm not aware of what that is, but we're going to try to investigate for them. And as we find these available, John, we'll make them available to people. There's also, again, I'll refer back to, if you have a retirement plan, you're allowed to take up to $300,000 out of your retirement plan and pay it back over a 3-year period without having to pay that 10% penalty. And you have to do a third a year. So even if you have a 401k plan that you converted into a Roth or a regular IRA for yourself, or you have an IRA, you can go ahead and take out, let's say if it's $30,000 out of what you have $50,000 in it. As long as you pay $10,000 back a year, you won't be subject to the 10% withdrawal rule. You won't be subject to any of the penalties. The only thing you're going to have is, of course, that investment isn't working for you. So that's another option to look at. That was written into the CARES Act, which kind of got swept under the carpet. But again, it's a self-funding loan. Home equity loans, credit cards with 0%. I just got a thing in the mail today, Wells Fargo, 18%, scratch that. 18 months, not 18%.
I mean, that
18
sounds better.
months, 0% financing on balance transfers, all right, at a 3% fee. Hey, 18 months, 0%, $10,000, a $300 fee, you net $9,700. That can be your working capital loan for the next couple of months. That could get you through the winter months.
It's certainly good.
So, people are kind of looking at that going, okay, I've got the PPP unemployment, and I had a number of questions whether we think the government is going to extend the PUA for beyond July. If they don't, again, here's the coverage for that PUA. Point of reference, if you are getting the additional 600 PUA, don't forget, that's going to be claimed as income at the end of the year. So if you are getting 600, my advice to you is put a little bit aside, because when you get that tax bill, that's going to be shock number 2. Yeah. Let's talk about the DJ community. What are we seeing? We're seeing possibly no income through this year into the first quarter of next year. When is the tax bill due? Usually April. So, kind of think about those pieces, John. And I think as you and I have discussed, at some point, we're going to kind of talk about how do you begin to plan? How do you begin to figure out where you're going to go from here? So, yeah. And hopefully we'll see some income coming in by the middle to the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise it's going to be a very long, cold winter. Mm-hmm. Jerry, I had a question about the interest. When does if a person is taking it as an advance loan and not asking for forgiveness, when does the interest kick start? When do they start accruing?
There's 6 months of no payments and interest forgiveness. It kicks in after the 6-month deferment on it. So really, it's a year and a half worth of interest that you're going to be paying on it. They haven't come out with the final regulation, the final guidance on that. But again, it's not going to revert back to day one from what I understand and read. Again, that is subject to change. But even if it does, you're only talking a period of 2 months. So on $10,000, 1% interest, it's $100 divided by 12 months. That's less than $10 a month. So again, we're not talking significant numbers unless people have gotten $200,000-$300,000.
Right.
We're not talking significant numbers. Again, let's put it into perspective. Most of the people out there are listening have been in the $12,000 to $20,000 to $15,000 range in getting what they got in the PPP program.
Yeah, that's it. I've been hearing quite a bit of that. I think the most I've heard from someone is they'd gotten like $48,000.
Yeah, and again, they had to be a multiple level company. Yeah. I guarantee you they probably, at $48,000, you've got to be 13 to 15 employees with probably an average payroll that you're writing off on your tax returns of about $130,000 to $140,000 a year.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that with their business.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I think we've gotten, we've pushed to the 50 minutes on tonight's show. It's gone long. So
we were a little late starting.
We'll go with that. We'll say we were a little late. So one more time for next week, next Monday night here on DJ and TV, we're going to be talking about how to set your business up and what type of ownership system you're going to be utilizing or should be utilizing. We'll look at all the different ones, and Jerry and I will be talking about those. And it might be, again, if you're not doing the Schedule C stuff because you haven't really, you've been running it kind of a cash under the table thing, this might be the time to set things up to be a business. If you have one, you may want to be switching because of how things have changed. And that'll be part of our little getting started with your DJ business on Monday night. Then Wednesday night, we'll be doing the version for the photo booth industry. So a lot of good information next week.
Yeah.
Excellent. Jerry, well, thank you much for, once again, some good information and your time on this. I really, truly appreciate it.
Yeah. And John, I know a couple of people have emailed me about, last week we talked about the flow chart and the Excel spreadsheet that I got from the accountants. I didn't purposely send it out because it is going to be revised once we started getting some of the forgiveness stuff. Again, if you go out to the SBA website, you're going to get a lot more information on the forgiveness. So for those of you who actually contacted me, I apologize. I hadn't sent it to you because I got wind of that this SBA forgiveness was having a number of changes. So I really didn't want to confuse you guys. Go out to the SBA website, pull the forms down. If you have trouble finding them, certainly reach out to me and I can give you a link. So more than happy to do that.
Excellent. That sounds great. Good stuff, Jerry. Well, thank you much for putting this together for tonight, and then we'll see you next Monday night.
Sounds good, John. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back a little later tonight. MJ's going to be doing his music and mixing show, so we'll catch you then.